Here's what I'm going to propose to do. I'm going to give you the rundown of how the days play out for the trip abroad. And then if there are questions about how the course is run, maybe people can shoot me an email and I can put a syllabus from a past time on there. So basically, 2 credits are done in Columbus, and then the 3rd credit is done in May, just after graduation. So that's how it works. So that credit is, you know, the credit hours are part of the tuition in the spring semester, not in the summer, which is why we did it that way. Okay, so let me begin. This is Down House, which is where Darwin lived with his wife and many children for the bulk of his life. So we get to go visit there, and you'll see when. And it's now obviously a place that people can tour, and it's a lovely place. Let's see, why isn't that advancing? Okay, so to start off, we would, you know, fly from Columbus, and the flights, the students this time around, the Education Abroad office is suggesting that people get their own flights, which we had done in the past because, well, actually we did the one flight out and then people did the return flight so people could stay longer if they wanted. So that was the idea there. So we fly into London Heathrow, and then since that is very close to the continent by way of the channel or a flight, it's a nice place to be if one wants to continue on and take a little bit more time. Now, where we'll be in England is, as I mentioned, in London. That's where the bulk of the time is. We will also go to Down House, which you saw, the home of Charles Darwin, and then up to Cambridge by way of train ride. So here's the draft itinerary, and I have to begin by saying that I didn't realize until a few minutes ago that I had missed a date. So it's actually 1 day longer than what you're seeing, at least the draft we're currently working with. And the way it would work out for the abroad portion is we would depart on May the 9th, a Tuesday in this coming, in 2023, and arrive in London. And on that very first day, our goal is to stay awake and get immediately on England time and London time, that is. So because it's 5 hours ahead of us, and that way we are ready to go for the rest of the time, as opposed to getting there and being tired and going to bed. It's very hard to adjust if you do that. So our goal that day is we just walk around. We walk around Piccadilly Circus and Hyde Park, and we typically go to the Victorian and Albert Museum, one of the several free museums that we'll be visiting, and it's a wonderful place. The very next day, we would go to the Linnean Society. We have a lot of special tours set up, and that's one of them, and I'll show you some images from that and these other places. And typically, we have a group dinner where students decide where they want to go in the West End of London, where the theater district is, and then we go to see Phantom of the Opera, which is a real treat. The following day, we have another special tour, and this is at the Natural History Museum, and we'll have a colleague there give us a behind-the-scenes tour of the insect collection and where the person works, where the scientist works. And then we have after lunch, some free time to visit either the Science Museum, which is nearby, or the Victorian and Albert Museum, to go back there, or to do whatever one might want to do in the afternoon. Most of the evenings are free, by the way. So students get to, you know, hang out. We only ask that you do things in pairs so that if something happens, there's someone with you. You know, if you get lost or whatever, if something befalls you, we like to know that there's someone with you. The following day, so day 4, students are comfortable with getting around London on the tube. And so we have that set up as a free day. And my thought here is, if there's an interest in 1 or 2 places, then Dr. Strange and I, Jamie and I, can go to those two places with the students if we have a critical mass. So for example, if people wanted to go to Kew Gardens, which is one of the world's foremost gardens, we could do that, or any of these places, or perhaps another, but these are certainly the top sites of London, I would say. Following day, we have set up to go to Westminster Abbey and the National Gallery. And here again, there are tours or audio tours, and you can walk at your own pace and see everything. And the National Gallery, typically I'll tell students a bit about the Impressionism galleries. There are 3 really wonderful galleries there of that. And then in addition, you can see paintings by Da Vinci that you can't, there aren't paintings by Da Vinci in the US. There's only one in Washington, DC. You can see sketches of his, but and other, perhaps other things, but not paintings. So it's a good idea to visit those while we're at the National Gallery too. Next day is the day that we travel from London to Down House. And there again, we'll have a special tour and also lunch at Down House. There's a really nice cafe there. And then the following day is the second free day. So we would insert into here another day in London where typically, you know, I would decide maybe the Tower of London, or one more trip, maybe St. Paul's Cathedral. But anyway, there are at least 2, one here, and another half day of free time, and a lot of the evenings. Okay, and then we would go to London, or excuse me, to Cambridge from London, starting off because the train is located there to go to Cambridge at the British Library. This is just wonderfully convenient. We could go in for free and see a few really famous documents that they have there on display, and then catch the train to Cambridge, where upon arrival, we have a 3-hour guided tour. And weather permitting, we do punting, and I'll show you an image of what that is. That's going along the river with someone who punts us along, because the river Cam that goes through Cambridge isn't very deep. And so students and other people will pull along with these long poles and kind of pull you along, and that's called punting. The next day, we would set up to go to one of my favorite places, the University of Cambridge, the archives there, where we would again have a special tour. This is to view a lot of original materials of Darwin, some letters of his, some notebooks. It's really special because the archivists will set it up for us and show us things we wouldn't normally get to see. The Cedric Museum is another site. This is where they have Darwin's microscope and a couple of other of his objects there that I'll show you in a minute in a slide. And if the weather is inclement on this day, we can go punting on the next. The following day, we would walk from Cambridge to Grantchester to, it's just a lovely countryside, and it goes along the River Cam, where the punting occurs, and probably see people walking and students perhaps, but we'll have lunch there. Evening, we can go to King's College Chapel. Again, I'll show you pictures of this. There's a service there that operates every Friday night, typically in the Anglican church, and it's called Evensong, where the choir sings. It's really lovely. And then the last night there in Cambridge, or the next day rather, we would have at the University of Cambridge, its Botanic Garden. This is a very old garden. One of Darwin's foremost advisors, Professor Henslow, started it really. And they have trees that Professor Henslow planted at the Botanic Garden. Again, we have a tour from people that really know their botany and know the history of the gardens. In the evening, we would get ourselves from Cambridge back to London and then to London Heathrow, so that in the morning, that the final day, we would be ready to go out. So let me show you some images if I can, unless you have any questions on that so far. I think the images are easier, but I just wanted to kind of walk you through the way we have it laid out for the free time and the guided time. Okay, so this is the Victorian and Albert Museum in London. This was built, Albert really wanted this for the people as a way to educate them. You know, this was back in the mid to late 19th century. People Regular people weren't really traveling that much. And it was a way to show them artifacts from around the world so that they could become educated by attending a museum. So museums were relatively new at that time. So it's a beautiful space and very large space. And here you see another view of the exterior. And inside, there are a lot of casts of famous sculptures, again, because Albert thought it was important for his people, you know, the citizenry, to be able to become educated. This is one of the dining rooms. It's just lovely, where you can get coffee and sweets. We often stop there. And up in one of the galleries, there is an exhibit from 1851. Now, I'm not going to dwell too much on this, but can you guys see this book? I hope. Uh-oh, are you there?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, great. Okay, so it's 1851. There was a big exhibit in London. You know, Great Britain was really a huge engine of the Industrial Revolution. And at mid-century, they decided, Albert and others, to have a big exposition and a huge space that was built very quickly. I think you can get a feel for it. If you look down at the bottom of this book, let me see, you can see people here in carriages, perhaps. So it was a huge glass enclosed space out in the fairgrounds in Hyde Park, I think, and in a big garden, you know, big open space. And they invited countries from all around the world to submit examples of the art and industry from that country. So it was a big deal. The Darwins went, many people, you know, went. I mean, hundreds of thousands of people. Can't remember the exact number right now. Anyhow, this is a little book about that. And one of the things that was exhibited, which you can see in one of these galleries, is this pottery from Josiah Wedgwood. He was Darwin's grandfather, so on his mother's side, on Darwin's mother's side. So in that room, there are a lot of displays from that 1851 exhibit, of the crystal. It became known as the Crystal Palace. So it's a famous piece of history in Britain. Okay, the Natural History Museum, this is where I mentioned that, you know, there are several entomologists and other naturalists that work there, and we would typically go behind the scenes with an entomologist and have them show us where they work and what the what the facilities are like and so forth, things that you wouldn't normally see. We'll also be able to view the exhibits of the museum, but we'll get a special tour as well. And of course, Westminster Abbey, I mentioned, you know, this is, by the way, sorry to do that. This is where Darwin and many other famous people are buried. There's a poet's corner, for example. So it's one of the high points of a trip to London. And that evening we would plan to go, and we would have this covered in the cost of the tour of the trip, to go to Phantom of the Opera in the West End. This was where it was first performed, in this very theater. It's pretty exciting. We would go, I think, the next day, the Linnaean Society. These are Linnaeus's volumes, and we go inside a vault. It's pretty exciting. Here we are with the archivist, and these are Linnaeus's books and his insect collection, believe it or not. So that's a fun place to go. And she gave us a tour, the archivist, and we also had a lecture by Dr. George Beccaloni. And he is, I would say, the world's authority foremost on Alfred Russel Wallace. And you may remember that Wallace was the co-discoverer of the theory of evolution by means of natural selection, along with Darwin, hit upon the idea at the same time as Darwin. And so here's a paper that, or a chapter that Dr. Beccaloni has in this book. So we got to see him. They pulled out and hear a lecture by him, and the archivist pulled out all these, you can see on the table here, these various artifacts that belonged to Alfred Russel Wallace. And here's an example of one of them here. So he talked to us about these, and it was very exciting. If you look him up at this website, and we'll make these slides available, you'll be able to, you'll be able to read more about that if you wish, more about Alfred Russel Wallace and his significance to Darwin. He and Darwin remained friends for the extent of their lifetime. Okay, here's an example of Kew Gardens, just some images. If we were to go there on the day I think a Saturday, they have an open air market where, students picked up some bakery items. It was really fun, and you can see it's just a spectacularly gorgeous place. Okay, and then Cambridge. Now we go to Cambridge because this is where the archives are that have the Darwin correspondence. They have, for the past, I don't know, many decades, been collecting all the known letters of Darwin to and from him. They already owned quite a number of them. They have the greatest repository in the world of the Darwin correspondence, but they're also the archivists have worked to transcribe and annotate them. So if you Google Darwin correspondence, you can get to the website and see transcribed all of Darwin's letters that they know of at the moment. So that's why we go there. That's where Darwin completed his undergraduate degree, and that's where he met Professor Henslow of the Botanic Garden fame. So one of the places we like to go is the Eagle. This is, it says here, the most famous pub in Cambridge. Does anybody happen to know why that is? That's online. One of the reasons I'll tell you is World War II, a lot of soldiers went here. And so there's a lot of history, but there's something that happened in 1950s, 52, 53, that went on at the Eagle. Well, not hearing an answer, excuse me, I'll tell you, this is where Watson and Crick, the two scientists who figured out, excuse me, along with a couple of others, help from a couple of others, sorry, I think I inhaled some of my juice there, forgive me. They figured out the molecular structure as far as the double helix and the bases of DNA, of the DNA molecule ATGC that you know so well. This is where they would go. They were both at Cambridge. And when they were wanting to talk things over, they would go to the pub. And that's the pub that they went to. It was near to the lab they were working in. So it's a fun place to go. And the pubs, of course, in England are great, and people often go there to eat. The Cedric Museum, I mentioned, this is where they have some Darwin artifacts. They have some of the fossils he collected. His microscope is here over in the lower left here, excuse me. And some of his notes are there. Excuse me. So sorry. Let me try another sip. Okay, and here we are in a special showing of Darwin's artifacts. So I had worked with the archivist, by email to talk about what they might pull out for us to see. And then they laid out the books for us and various pieces from Darwin's life, work, some children's drawings, some of his kids' drawings. It was really fun. And we talked with the archivists and learned a lot. And, we had already learned a lot about Darwin, and now we got to see the real thing. Of his materials in this back room of the archives. I mentioned Evensong, which we can see performed at King's College Chapel. This is the world's, and here you see part of King's College at Cambridge University. This is the world's, in the chapel, it's the world's largest fan vault. Was completed in around 1515. These are obviously very ancient university, this is. And here is the close-up of that ceiling. So it's just beautiful. And this is where the choir sits and sings during Evensong for that service. I mentioned the walk to the Orchard Tea Garden. This is along the banks of the River Cam. It's an easy walk from Cambridge. You can see someone is punting there. The students will typically come down from the university on a punt boat. I'll show you another picture, I think, of other people punting. And so one can sit out in this lovely orchard, and we have lunch provided for that. So it's fun to sit in these sling back chairs and relax after the walk. And it's a lovely walk. I don't know if you're familiar, but there was a series on PBS called Grantchester. It's really superior actors in it. Comes out of the BBC, out of the BBC, out of England, and it's all filmed there. And even the extras in the cast, the actors are professional actors that are well known in England, but the other actors that are the background people are actual people from Grantchester. It's really kind of fun. So it's fun to watch the series after you've been there. So I'm going to pause now. We haven't, the college that does the education abroad for us hasn't yet figured out the program fee. But there's an application deadline of November 2nd. So you still have plenty of time. And this is what's called the backs of the colleges, by the way, the backs, because regular people don't get to see that. In other words, if you're not a student or an instructor of the university, then typically you don't get to see the back of the different colleges of the university. And this is the River Cam here. But if you go on a punt boat, that's how you can see them. And of course, the tour guide tells you what you're looking at, which of the colleges you're seeing as you go along on the boat. Okay, so again, we'll post these slides for you. I'll send them to Matthew, and then he can circulate them, I think, if that'll work. And so these links would be active. I was asked to remind you by our study abroad office that if you're interested, you can open an application without any commitment to the program. So you can look here at About It online, select the Darwin program, and there's further information here from the study abroad. There is a deadline for when, if you do put in the application fee, if you think you're going to go, they'll let you know the deadlines by which you can get it all back if you change your mind. But you can start filling out the application without putting any money in at all. This is showing you the website and where you would look in the red box. I already mentioned we don't yet know what the cost is. There's a program web flyer that I think you can click on here that is the previous year, but of course COVID didn't let us go. And but they're telling us to estimate that it might be about that much currently for 2023. So you could get a base estimate for it, if that makes sense. So, it's kind of like to take a guess at this moment in time until the study abroad office who figures these things out lets us know what the cost will be. And again, I'll remind you that airfare is not included. So, you can hunt around for better airfares. And if you want to go on the same flight that Dr. Strange and I are on, we would give you that information. Otherwise, we'll tell you when to arrive, and you can do that, and what to do when you arrive to find the hotel in London. So we would figure all that out ahead of time. They have the college education abroad office has some information on funding at abroad. So these, links are active. You can check into that. There are some scholarships. I know that Dr. Strange was talking about having some scholarships available through the department that you can apply for. So, more on that. Dr. Strange didn't join us tonight, but I'm sure we'll be able to follow up with you on that. And so next steps are, again, to remind you of the application deadline. And you can email me. We can email as well. I'll show you on the last slide our study abroad person that we work with on this. If you don't have a passport and you need one, you can apply for a passport. There's a tutorial there. And they told us that the Office of International Affairs on campus continues to monitor for COVID. So far, this isn't a problem, and we're hoping that it continues to be that way. I can't, we don't know yet. It's been canceled the past couple of years because of this. We hope that it will go. So here's the slide. There are the punt boats. Dr. Schumann, Elizabeth Schumann, is in the 100 Ag Admin building. You can email her directly with questions. She is the point person in our college for the education abroad and this course in particular. And then my email is here, and Dr. Strange, who would be the co-instructor with me, is his emails there. So I think that's the last slide I have. Let me make sure of that. Yep. So any questions or things I can answer for you? And I don't need to keep you, since, if you don't have questions, that's fine. But if you do, I'm happy to try to answer them for you. And thanks for listening. I appreciate your being here, especially in an off hour. Matthew, if we don't have questions, it's fine with me if people want to go about their business for the evening.
Okay,
And we have a couple of I think we have a couple of more sessions set up, but people can always write, email me. But go ahead, Matthew. I think that's
Simone just asked a question in chat.
okay. Simone, hi. Is there a required corresponding class? Yeah, so hi, Simone. The way we have the course set up is the first two credits of the course are taken on the Columbus campus. You sign up for the 3 credits in the spring semester of 2023 so that you don't have to pay summer tuition. And then the 3rd credit of 3 occurs, you earn that abroad, but you've already paid for it with your spring semester tuition. Does that make sense, Simone? Okay, and what that allows us to do, the idea is we've learned all the things we want to learn here in Columbus. So when we get there, the idea is to see as much as we can and experience as much as we can. I don't want you to be, working in your hotel room or in a coffee shop. We would really rather have you be out. So all of the sort of heavy lifting where we're going to read about Darwin and understand him in a historical context, that's the whole goal of the course, to really understand evolution and Darwin within the time frame of his life. And then at the very end, we bring it out to current time so that you have some sense of evolution in our day and why it's relevant. So we usually pick a book that's very easy reading that we can talk about there, but we don't spend a lot of time doing homework there. We spend time out and about. Anyone else? And I think, I'm not sure if this matters. Oh, the course is usually held every year, yes, in the spring, except that with the last couple of years, it hasn't gone with COVID. The university suspended study abroad because they just weren't sure if it was going to be okay. So, the deadline closed several months ahead so that they could plan for it. And we didn't want students to be caught short in January if the course then got canceled, or in February, if COVID got bad. So they canceled it to allow students to go ahead and take another course for their curriculum. Yeah, we didn't want to, which made sense. let's see, I was going to say something else. I'm not sure. I don't remember what it was, but basically we try to prep you as much as possible to be as knowledgeable as possible so that when you go there, you're just enjoying it. That's the idea. So when you go to the Darwin Correspondence archives where, where they have worked on annotating them. So in other words, when a letter of Darwin's is there, anytime a scientific name is mentioned, or even a common name of an insect or another organism, or a person is mentioned, or whatever, somebody had to go in, an archivist had to go in, and or a historian, or both, had to go in and annotate those things so that it becomes very useful for who's ever accessing the Darwin Correspondence online. And they published the books in hard copy, but they made them freely available, all the letters online, and it's a searchable database. It's really fabulous. So we will be taking advantage of that in the course, but you'll see not Darwin's handwriting and not the other people's handwriting online, but rather the typed version so that it's easy to read. I hope that makes sense. And they'll give you footnotes to, if Darwin makes reference to an important book, for example, or a person, they'll tell you who that is, so you have the context. It's a wonderful resource. Any other ideas or questions? All right, well, if things pop up that you have more questions about, let me know. And actually, Matthew, are you able to grab these slides, or no, do I need to send them to you? Oh, actually, we don't need to, because you know what?
I've recorded it, but
yes, and I could send it to you anyway if you'd like, so that one
yeah,
can open it and not have to listen to the PowerPoint. Yeah, we'll do that. They don't have to listen if they don't want to. Students don't want to. Okay, so I think we're good. Matthew and everyone, what do you think?